Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are excited to be here for another week with you guys. Hunting season's winding down a little bit, but there's still some hunts out there. People got some hunts, maybe some late muzzleloader, some late archery. But this week, we are going to take a look at what happens after you take the shot on that animal.
Let's just say that the reason why this topic, and I don't know if you had a reason with it, but just my 2025 season in general, I had a lot of different approaches to what I did after the shot, and we'll dive into it a little bit more, but we just feel like this is something that some of you might be grieving. Maybe you had a mishap earlier in the season, and you're just like, man, if I could redo it over again, this is how I would have approached it, because as comedic as it sounds, what you do after the shot, depending on the situation, sometimes can mean you actually finding that animal and getting that animal and never recovering that animal.
Absolutely. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, we just got to thank the wonderful companies that we get to work with this podcast. And the first one of those is Onyx Hunt. Most of you guys know what this is. It's an online mapping software. You can use it on the desktop and you can use it on the phone. One awesome feature that is very applicable to this topic that we're going to talk about today is its rangefinder tool. You can use the compass mode and basically send a rangefinder out on your phone. Use your ranger and your handheld ranger and drop a pin approximately where you want to.
Exactly.
And that's been a huge tool that we'll talk about in helping us recover animals.
That's right. Code SY20 on your Onyx Hunt subscription. Also, we want to thank Vortex Optics. We have used these optics for the past decade, and we just haven't had anything go wrong. In fact, as crazy as my 2025 season has been, I've taken these optics through rain and snow and wind and steep and thick and nasty and everything. And when it comes to the red zone of making that important shot, I have not had anything go wrong. You just can't beat the reliability to know that, when your shot matters the most, it's going to perform. We cannot recommend Vortex enough, especially because if you don't have thousands of dollars to spend and you only have $100 or $200 to spend, they have optics for you. So you can use code SY10 at eurooptic.com, and you can save some cash on all Vortex Optics products at that website.
And lastly, we just want to thank Reveal, specifically Tacticam. These are the cell cameras that we use and we have been using, and they just are fantastic. And this is a really exciting time of the year as seasons wind down to get back out there in the woods, start setting some cameras, see animals' activity in the winter, and just start that whole cycle again next year for 2026.
You've been getting some pretty cool footage of some whitetail bucks hitting some scrapes.
I have, yeah.
And
up on their hind legs and
like just licking a branch that's hanging over them. And yeah, that trail cams, it's probably got some of the sweetest footage that we've captured this year so far in trail cams.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately for Nate, they've been just nocturnal, so that's how it goes.
Except for the little
guy.
The little guys.
Well, with that said, Nate, you already know we got to do our weekly fight. This year, I'm going to start it off. So we're going to enter into Trivia Duel. If you guys don't know what this is, you're new. I ask Nate a question. He tries to answer it, vice versa, and the loser just loses. That's basically what we're doing so far right now. There's no punishment for it yet, but maybe in the future, we'll up the stakes a little bit. But with that said, we're going to kick things off here because we've got plenty of things to talk about. So this doesn't really have to do anything with hunting, but this just has to do with Washington State. You can have a multiple choice if you want to. If not, you can take a random guess. How many lakes are in Washington State? Approximately.
Oh, boy.
Did you want multiple choice?
I would love multiple choice.
Okay, I'm going to give you 4 options. And again, these are approximate, so they're not exact. 1, 5,600.
I thought your first option was 1.
I
know it's not
okay,
that one.
Let me rephrase. A, 5,600. B, 7,200. C, 8,000. And D, 8,900.
Whoa. Option, the lowest was way higher than I was even thinking. I'm going to go with A, 5,600. 5,600.
Okay. Washington State approximately has 8,000 lakes in the state.
Wow.
It's a lot of lakes.
I wonder what they're categorizing as a lake.
I think there's certain definitions that classify something as a lake.
Huh.
Like a lake is different than a pond.
Right.
Whereas to the naked eye it might look the same, but I think there's a actual, if you look at it, there's nuances between a lake and a pond, but that's just an approximate.
Interesting. Wow, that's way more than I would have guessed.
That's a lot of lakes that need to go fish.
That's a lot of fish. That's what I was about to say. All right, here's what I've got for you. Have you heard of the Camp Ripley study?
Nope.
Okay. The Camp Ripley study was completed in the early 1990s, and it looked at the retrieval numbers of archery kills, of bow hunter kills. On average, what percentage of deer did bow hunters report recovering after the shot? So this was bow hunters that shot a deer and were reporting whether they recovered that deer that they shot or whether they did not. Do you want options?
What year was this done again?
This was in the early 90s.
Okay, early 90s.
Yep.
Okay, so, just granted, being back early 90s, technology is nowhere near what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what percentage did hunters actually successfully recover their deer?
Correct.
I don't know how specific we are, but I'm going to say 32%.
So it's actually 87%.
Really?
Correct.
Whoa, that's way higher than I was anticipating.
Yeah, so I was going down this kind of rabbit hole, and this may feed future trivia duels, but I was looking at how game departments kind of reconcile wounded animals. And some states have a certain percentage of population loss due just for wounding, and then other game departments will group it in with the same thing as like predation and roadkill, and some of them just do all of those non-hunting mortalities as a one big group. But specifically, this was a study that looked straight to archery non-recovery from the early 90s, and it was only 13% that they reported were not able to recover, which I was thinking the same thing as you, that with the archery equipment in the early 90s, I don't think they had laser rangefinders. I didn't hunt in the early 90s.
That's a really interesting one, because I would love to see that study done in like 2025. Because
you think it should be way better.
But honestly, if I had to guess, I would attribute that to the fact that most of the people hunting way back then weren't taking 60-yard shots.
Correct, yeah.
They were taking essentially point-blank shots, which is a much higher, success, I would say.
Yeah.
The closer the animal is, generally speaking, the more your odds go up of actually killing an animal. Wow, that's way higher than I was guessing, obviously.
I know, me too. Let's jump into our process after we take a shot on an animal. And like you kind of alluded to earlier, this is such a wide scope of what encompasses what happens after you take the shot. And I mean, anything from maybe an accidental spinal shot where you watch the deer drop right in the spot, or a front, a shoulder shot, to a gut shot where you watch it run off and you may never recover that animal. There are still some fundamental basics that we can do every single time and set a routine and make it part of our habit to really help the process that happens after the shot.
Yep. So basically, we try to segment this because, again, as Nate said, this is a very nuanced topic. There's really this is exactly what I'm going to do every time, because yes, there's a core fundamental where it doesn't matter what happens. There's a process that Nate and I undergo. But once you get past those few steps, what happens afterwards is really dictated by how well you hit that animal or how well you think you hit that animal. So, for example, just to paint the picture better, if we gut shot a bear, it's a lot different than if we drop a bear and we know he's dead right there on the spot.
Yeah,
right?
And I'll start us off here kind of with a best case scenario, but this is a little story of the first bear I shot. And this is a video on your channel. And thankfully, when we hunt together, this isn't obviously the practice of everybody. We have footage that we can go and review, and we end up doing that a lot. In fact, that's one of the best parts about filming hunts, is being able to go back and review kill shot footage. But this was not the first big game animal I had shot, but this is the first bear that I had shot. And the way that you and I approached this were very different. And I shot this bear back in 2021, I believe. And after I took the shot, my heart's pumping, my adrenaline's racing. What I saw was the bear drop and roll just a little bit and he was in a patch of huckleberries where I thought I could see absolutely everything. And so my assumption was that I was going to walk up there and see him about 5 yards away from where I shot. You had a little bit of different angle. You saw him drop immediately on the spot, roll a little bit, but then kind of get up and run a little bit into the timber. And the way that we approached the recovery of that animal was really different. I didn't, in a big huckleberry field, I didn't look at any sort of distinguishing markers, and we were, 250-ish yards away.
Mm-hmm.
Even with a close shot on an animal in not much vegetation where I saw it drop, I could have gotten myself into a lot of trouble being new to it and not really having my process of what I do after shots unless I can physically see the animal laying right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that often comes down to experience and what you know and what you don't know. The reality of it is hindsight's 20/20. Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And granted, in that situation, Nate made a great shot, but Nate shot him quartering to, if I remember correctly, broke his right shoulder and double lunged him, but it was enough to put the bear down on the spot because it broke his shoulder, literally, basically just swept him off his feet. But it wasn't enough to, just put him down for good. So the bear rolled 15 yards or so, and then I didn't really see him. I just saw the tops of these huckleberry bushes move off into the timber. So I knew he didn't die right there. I knew he just ran off. And so the approach with that is, it looked good because I was literally looking at it on the camera footage. And so I'm like, that looks like a dead bear, but the bear's obviously not dead. Mm-hmm. And so basically Nate was just like, hey, let's just go straight up to where I shot him, or where Nate shot him, meaning Nate. But to me, it's like, having hunted bears in the past, basically, to paint the picture better, Nate's shooting it's not super steep up, but the bear is above us. And whenever I recover an animal, I always like high ground. I want to be above the animal, especially when it comes to a predator. Because generally speaking, not always, but when an animal is wounded, especially when they're like, if they're still alive, where it's like a fatal wound, but they're not going to die immediately. Generally speaking, they run downhill. And that's the last place you want to be, especially when it's a bear. Mm-hmm. And so my thought process was like, let's do this loop, get above where Nate had shot him, and we'll drop down, get to where the bear was, and then we'll start tracking from there. And so in the moment, one of our mistakes was we just, I don't know if, at that time, I don't know if Onyx had the compass mode yet.
I don't believe it did, or we didn't know about it.
But all we did was, we were just like, it's an open huckleberry field, like, let's just walk up there, like, we know. When we got up there, all the huckleberries looked the same. Obviously, we learned the huckleberry bushes were a lot taller than we thought. Some of them were as tall as us. And so when we got up there, I mean, you can't see the landmarks that you could see from 300 yards on the other hillside. So we spent like a good 15 minutes just trying to find where that bear was when Nate initially shot. Mm-hmm. This would have been eliminated had we just took a moment, took a picture of the area that Nate was shot in, or Nate shot the bear in, and then we just said, hey, here's a stump, or here's something, we need to look for this, whatever object it is. We didn't do any of that. We kind of just rushed our way in there. Mm-hmm. Luckily, after just kind of gridding the area, we came across the spot where you shot him.
Yeah, and actually, if I remember correctly, we were able to look back at footage and use a landmark of this little white, it was either a stump round end or a little white rock.
I think it was a dead log.
Yeah, a dead log that was kind of unique to that specific area that the bear was in. Because whether it's huckleberries or especially burn, mm-hmm. for any of you guys that have ever hunted burn, the way that it looks glassing across the hillside or shooting into a burn versus when you get over to that same face that the burn was completely disorienting. Yep. And you don't know which tree from which tree. So I think just out of this, using this bear as an example, just the first thing I do, again, like you said, unless I can physically see the animal laying there dead, and even if I can, once I get over there, because things look so similar, is if I don't have that shot on film, I will take a photo of where I was at when I shot it. I won't move mm-hmm. at all. And obviously I'll zoom in if I can and do that. And then another thing I'll do is I will use that rangefinder tool from where I was laying with my rifle to where I shot the animal, and I'll use the compass mode, the rangefinder mode on Onyx, point it to the direction, and drop a pin that will get me at least at the bare minimum in an approximate area that animal was.
Yeah, it'll put you at least in the right drainage or tree or whatever. So to specify a little bit more, if you guys don't know what this is, so basically the process is this. You shot an animal, and in this case, the animal is laying dead. Like, you can visibly see the animal dead from your shot position. You take your actual rangefinder, you range the animal, and let's say he's dead like 350 yards. You pull up your phone on OnX, and then you go into this compass mode, as they call it. And the moment you turn compass mode on, your phone will automatically point you to wherever your phone is pointing at. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you put your phone directly facing your dead animal or your target. And then, again, the animal's dead at 350 yards. So then you can go into the app and you plug in 350 yards, or you drag that little marker up to 350 yards. So now that you have the distance correct, you also have the direction correct. And then once you have both of those correct, you simply tap that little pin, and then it drops a pin on OnX. And you can save that marker. That pin on OnX, when you hike over there, if you have your GPS on, you will have your little blue marker, which is you, and you will eventually go right up to that pin.
This is something that even if I shoot the animal and see it drop,
you still do it.
I still do it. Another good example of this is last year's. It seems like it's always with bear, but last year's bear, this blonde bear that I shot. For any of you guys watching, I guess you can't actually see it, but she's hanging right up here above the studio. Again, about from the shooting position, as obvious as you could see, there was a huckleberry patch. And then in the huckleberry patch, there was a little triangle of tall bushes. Mm-hmm. And the bear went in and died right at the tip of that triangle of large bushes. And I was thinking, okay, like 1.5 huckleberries, 6-foot bushes. Should be really easy. We get over there, it's like 6-foot huckleberries and like 20-foot bushes.
Yep.
Or 15-foot bushes. Everything is way deeper than it looked like from my shooting position. And all of a sudden, if I wouldn't have had that pin, either I'm going back to my shooting position, which took a while to get from over to the animal because we're shooting kind of cross canyon, or you are kind of just wandering around in the area that you think.
Yep.
Whereas if you have that pin, you can at least be like, I'm within, maybe 5 yards, maybe 10 yards.
Yep.
But I'm within an area that I know this animal at least was either shot at or I saw it die in.
Yeah, in your situation, that's what worked for you. For me, in that moment, I actually didn't even use that compass mode because my only job was to film. And so I followed that bear. I tracked her through the whole sequence of Nate shooting that bear. And I knew exactly where that bear last moved. And so, like, I kept a visual marker in my head and, like, this is the bush. I knew exactly what the bush was, too, because it was so distinguishable from all the other bushes that even when you got close, it's like, I still know this bush because it was, like, one of the taller ones out of everything. It was like this little tree with, like, a tree hat. Mm. And I used that as a place marker, and sure enough, we got over there, and that bear, like you're with the OnX, it gets you in the right area. Like, it gives you a general idea of where the bear is. But to me, because I was following that bear the whole time, through the camera, I was like, I know exactly where that bear last moved. Now, obviously, is it dead right there? I don't know. But that was the last place I saw it because I just saw the tree wiggle. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, we got up there. You were still thinking, oh, we got to go a little bit higher. And I was like, the bear's literally dead where I last seen it. Mm-hmm. And to your point, this bear, it was a very good bear, like maybe 150 pounds, just your average bear. With how those trees and willow-like bushes were, she had like rolled into this hole where in a ball where you almost couldn't even see it because of how she rolled, and she kind of got tucked up underneath these things.
And when you saw the bear, you had me come over, and you were basically standing within maybe 2 feet of it. And I did not see the bear until I was also standing within 2 to 3 feet of it.
I basically almost stepped on her.
Yeah.
Before I was like, oh, that doesn't look like a bush.
Yeah. And so this is just kind of to wrap up the best case scenario.
Yep.
Even with your best case scenario, whether it's a burn, unless you're walking straight line in a desert to your animal, and you never lose visual of it, a burn or huckleberry patches or even timber, after you take that shot, take a moment, drop a pin on where you're at, take a picture if it's not on footage, And even if you don't have Onyx, use your rangefinder, range it again,
Yep.
and do some of these things to establish, because when your adrenaline is going, your mind's going a mile a minute.
Yep.
And all you want to do, you're so excited, especially on these hunts where you've worked so hard, all you want to do is to get to that animal. And it can be so easy to forget to do some of those basics of like, okay, where am I actually at right now?
Mm-hmm.
Where did I actually shoot that bear at? Because you go back and you're like, oh, I shot the bear. Oh, like you can't remember
don't know.
which huckleberry bush was it? These things that seemed really obvious in the moment. So just do a couple of those basics, and I do this every single time, even if I know or think I know or I do know right where the animal's laying. And
Yep.
this is even in the scenarios where I'm walking to the animal, not necessarily to where I shot the animal at.
Yeah, and this is especially important if you shot something at last light, because trust me, when it gets dark, it's even worse than having daylight to do it. So I guess just another point to kind of bring up what you said earlier. Like if you don't have Onyx and you don't have the rangefinder tool, your rangefinder itself can save you a lot, because like Nate said, for whatever reason, it's just bear stories. But my first bear I shot in 2019, right? Didn't have the Onyx rangefinding tool. I was on a solo hunt, and I had shot this bear at 450 yards, and he was in like some really thick stuff. I shot him 450 yards, and I ranged it 450 yards. I ended up shooting him low, but I didn't know that at the time. I just saw him react. He ran off. When I got over there, I couldn't find where I had shot this bear, because over there, all the brush is so tall. So what I kept doing was I kept ranging that rock that I shot from. I was like 470 yards. I was like, I'm too far, because I shot him at 450. I would hike 430 yards, and I'm like, I'm too close now. And crazy enough, I had somehow circled around where that bear actually ran and tucked himself into. Granted, he's still alive. He didn't die from that first shot. He just ran and he tucked himself in some brush. I somehow made a circle around him, and I was like, I can't find this bear. And I almost gave up. I was literally on my way out, where I was like, you need to go find where you shot him, because you can't just give up right now. And so I went in a second time, and that's when I bumped him out of his bed, and he ran and I killed him. So just goes to show, like, your rangefinder, it can really put you in the right spot. But on X, using that compass mode will put you exactly on that spot, or at least much closer to guessing, because you can have 5 different positions where you're ranging 470, right? You can be low or high on the ridge, but then you're not even close to where you shot your animal. So that's just one of the things we can do. But basically, with this first segment, this is kind of like, as Nate said, this is our go-to scenario now, where whether it's we see the animal dead or we last seen an animal, for example. We always take a picture, and most of the time we're filming. I'm always filming. Granted, I don't always get the kill shot on video, but you always take a picture. You do your best to mark that location on Onyx, and then you go over there. And the last thing we should mention is we also use our tracker mode. Make sure you turn on your tracker so that you know where you've been.
Yeah.
Because it will show you.
And that was something I was going to mention kind of in the next scenario, especially where anything other than shooting and seeing the animal die, and you're going to where you shot the animal at.
Yep.
So you're going in with the mindset of tracking. And just a quick little narrative. I'm going to try to pick an example that's not a bear.
Okay.
But this last fall during archery season, this was my second season hunting deer in this area out of a tree stand. And this year I took a shot on a deer, and it was about 6 a.m., so a little bit after first light. Kind of ideal scenario, right? You're not in any sort of rush, or you don't feel like you're in any sort of rush with the kind of impending nighttime. But then it was also the first time I'd actually released an arrow out of a tree stand, and safety being so important in tree stands, my first instinct was, I got to do this slow and take my time. You're not running right up to an animal. You're taking your time. And on top of that, the shot that I took, out of the gate, I was fairly confident that it was not a lethal hit. And because of that, I kind of shifted into a new mindset. Obviously a very different mindset than you shoot the animal, you see the animal go tip over. And this was take a deep breath and then take time. And take as much time as you can pretty much stand to take. And even that, a lot of times, is not enough. To sit and wait for even just 30 minutes after a shot can be excruciating, much less 2 to 3 hours. And so in this scenario, I took an archery shot. I was shooting out of a tree stand, and this being my first time releasing an arrow out of a tree stand on an actual animal. Kind of my ground hunting instincts took over, and I did not account for the angle out of the tree stand, which resulted in what I suspected was a low shot that just kind of went through muscle, which, kind of spoiler alert in the end of the story, is what it turned out to be. This animal, I have plenty of trail cam photos, now he's back just running around, and it was just a flesh wound. However, I went into this with the mentality of this was either not a lethal hit, or it was a hit that's going to take a little while to kill this animal. And so obviously I'm not going to throw in the hat without looking and say, oh, I don't think it was a lethal hit, and head home. I'm going to treat this animal like it was a lethal hit that was just going to take a while. And so I approached this with the tracking mentality. And this is a little bit different than the sitting there, standing there, watching the animal dead. I took time. And this is the hardest thing still for me to do, is to sit and take time. And why I use this example is I was in a tree stand, and so it was a little bit more potent of a reminder. I literally took my phone out and I set a 2-hour timer on my phone, and I said, I'm not getting out of this tree stand until those 2 hours are up. And one thing that came out of that time was being in literally the exact same position I shot from. I did not have this on film, but I was able to replay from my vantage point the whole scenario over and over. And so by the time that my timer went off on my phone and I had given it 2 hours, I was getting out of that tree stand with a plan. And it wasn't to cut the trajectory off and head to where I think the animal was going to be. It was a really slow, kind of meticulous approach. And so from there, and tracking in and of itself could be probably will at some point be a whole discussion. But I went to tracking this animal. I got out of the tree stand. I started the tracker on my Onyx app and started my tracking process.
Yeah. The moral of the story is how you think you shot the animal dictates what you do after the shot, right? In this situation, again, we have the core fundamentals, right? Doesn't matter if you hit the animal well or you hit it bad. The first thing we do, we take a moment, reassess the situation. This is where we shot the animal. This is where he ran to, or in some situation where he's dead, right? But again, that's the core. Take a photo or have a really good visual of it. Usually just take a photo with your phone. Pin your shot or where the animal was on Onyx. Doesn't matter, right? Your bear story, that's what we did. Your archery deer story right here, that's what you did. Mm-hmm. You always have that core fundamental, because when you have that, you just already set the trajectory of recovering that animal so much higher than if you were to constantly do it blind. To flip it on the other side, right? Like this is like the second story that we just talked about is really slow, wait it out. 2 hours is a really long time.
It's a really long time.
When you shoot an animal, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to flip it to my end, and this is kind of like a way different mentality. And we're giving you guys a bunch of different examples, and then we'll all tie it back in a much more organized fashion at the end of the podcast, right? So this year in Wyoming, 2025, I had an archery mule deer tag, right? This was different because I was spawn stock. I was on the ground. You were in a tree stand. So frankly, even if you wanted to move, you couldn't really move until you got out of the tree stand.
Right.
But to me, being on the ground, I'm mobile. So in case you guys haven't seen this video, this is live on my Samong Outdoors YouTube channel. But I'm going to use this story to paint a different mentality of what I did after the shot because of the context of what happened.
Side note, I don't think I've told you congratulations yet on hitting 100,000 subscribers.
Hey, we just hit it. Hopefully this podcast isn't too far behind. But thank you. It's been a lot of hard work, and you played a big part of it. But anyways, back to the story. So with this mule deer, just to paint the picture better. So this buck's bedded like 90 yards away. Chris Ock and I, we spot the buck bedded. I make my stalk. I come up a mountain. He's 27 yards. I go to shoot. I'm aiming for 20, thinking he's 20, but he's 27 yards. And my arrow drop from 20 to basically 30 yards is only about like 3 to 4 inches, right? But with how that deer was angled, he was kind of downward, and I'm like shooting down. So in a way, I'm kind of shooting like your trajectory from a tree stand, shooting downward versus flat.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I shot him, I knew I hit him low. Like I was like, I know for sure, like that's just a little bit lower than I was anticipating because again, I'm thinking he's 20. So he takes off and he's like running in this tunnel system, and I could tell like he does not look hurt. Like he's bounding and jumping and like looking for a way out. And so he works his way up. He gets out of it and he stops, and he's basically facing away with a very like steep quartering away turn. Now, that's a shot that I will never take on an animal that I have not hit yet. But granted that I've drawn blood, at this point, I'm like, anything goes. So I get another arrow knocked. I aim for 60. He's 53. And I basically high shoulder and blow through his neck. He starts bounding off again. And this is a situation, right? So some people will be like, all right, I'm going to wait. But in this moment, I'm like, I'm going to chase this buck down. Because one, it is open country. It's sage country. So the other part of it was, even if I bump him, right, it's so open, I can see where he runs. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I have Chris Ock filming on the other ridge, so he has a panoramic view of both me and the deer. So it's not just me looking at this deer. On top of that, our editor, Chris, and Andrew were on the ridge that I was on, basically looking from the other side. So I had there was 3 different angles of looking in this little pocket that this deer could run out of, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew for a fact, even if I pushed him, somebody, some way, is going to see where this buck goes, which is why I was so aggressive with after my first shot. I was like, I'm just going to keep pushing this deer. After the second shot, he ran over the ridge, and he stopped maybe like 30 yards later. I rack a third one in, and all I see is his back and like his antlers. And immediately, I'm like, I remember I stopped for a second because my broadhead was rattling, so I had to go and like re-screw my broadhead. So it gave me a moment to like kind of catch my breath. And I look back up at the deer, and I can see this deer already like starting like go side by side. Like he's already woozy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, he's already going to die. So in this moment, I'm like, I know I can run up there and shoot him a third time. I know he's going to die, but like I don't know how fast he's going to die. Because the first shot was actually a lethal shot. It just didn't hit the heart perfectly. It was just a little bit offset from the heart. But it got enough that he was going to die. Because that second shot was not lethal at all. It was a high shoulder, blew through his neck. Basically flesh hit, right? And so I ran up there and basically shot him again, and I killed him. Completely different mindset than how you approached your deer that we just talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, how you hit, you have to understand the context of what's actually happening, right? And in that moment, I'm like, kind of what I just said. It's open country. I've already wounded this animal. 3, he's already looking like on the verge of tipping over, mm-hmm. right? And plus, I've got more eyes than just what I can see looking down in this valley, which is why I was so aggressive.
Yeah, so I think in that story, some of the advantages you had that kind of gave you that gut reaction to chase that deer is you were hunting open country.
Yep.
You had it on film from multiple angles, and you also had a lot of eyes. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, on top of that, you had a shot that you weren't fully confident in for that first shot. If you took that same shot at 30 yards, but you were solo hunting in timber, I can almost guarantee you that you wouldn't have been trying to bust through the timber chasing that deer down.
Oh, for sure, because I guarantee you I would not have had a second shot.
Right.
The only reason why I even had a second shot was because it was so open. Like, there was no way I was not going to see him. The only reason why I would not have a second shot was if he got out of my range. Mm-hmm. But 60 yards was like I was willing to send it at 60 yards on a second shot.
Right.
So, yeah, in that context, that's why I did what I did, right? But I guess one point that we haven't talked on that I guess can be made here is like you have to be, as exciting and out of the loop as you might feel in the moment where you're just so full of adrenaline. You still have to be cognizant enough to be able to do your best to accurately dissect the situation.
That is so much easier said than done in that scenario. Mm-hmm. Like when your sympathetic nervous system just takes full control of you and you get the buck fever, or not necessarily the buck fever, but that after that shot and you get that adrenaline dump and it's like the shakes, like the blurry vision, even like that, just your body's going crazy. It can be so difficult to take a step back and think, or in your scenario, to make a quick decision on what I need to do.
Yeah. And again, the reason why we say this is because, again, it's so nuanced, right? Like every situation is so different. You can approach every situation differently, but I do firmly believe that some situations there are better ways to go about it than others. So obviously we talked about archery. It's hardly ever, at least because we don't archery a lot, hunt a lot, right? If you're hunting thick timber, very few times do you actually visually see the animal go down. You might hear them, but where we hunt, like mostly up here in Northeast Washington, a lot of times it's so thick that the moment you shoot him, you see him for like 2-3 seconds and he's gone. Even if he's only running 50 yards, but it's so thick you don't see 50 yards. And so that's why, again, open country, different mindset. Tree stand, thick country, different mindset. Bear and thick country, it's a different mindset. One I want to jump on is it's funny because we're talking about this podcast at the end of a 2025 season, and I've had just about every situation possible this year. So I want to rewind. Just a few weeks ago, I did my Oregon blacktail hunt with a rifle, and this is completely throwing everything we just talked about out the window. Okay, so we had Colin spotted this buck, and he's locked down on this doe about 900 yards away. We make our stalk over there. By the time we get over there, it's only like 15 minutes, but both the buck and the doe had bedded down. The buck is bedding below the doe. The doe's like on the spine. The buck's in the brush a little bit, and he's basically bedded facing towards us. And so I get set up. It's about 380 yards, and we sit there for probably, I don't even know, like 2 hours. And I'm just like looking at this buck, like crosshairs on him, dialed, everything's ready to go. And I'm like, this buck surely is going to stand up and give me a shot, right? Like, there's no way he just gets up and goes, right? Well, his doe, about 10 minutes prior to him getting up, gets up and is kind of milling on top of this ridge. And keep in mind, like, we're up high and they're down in the gut, but they're on a small finger ridge. So, like, if they decide to duck over, we can't see. So the doe's, like, milling around. And as the doe starts to dip over the ridge, like, you could tell, like, the buck's kind of, like, turning his head, looking at the doe, kind of, like, keeping tabs on making sure he can see the doe. And the doe's slowly making her way over, and the buck gets up, and he stretches a little bit. But, again, he's kind of, like, quartering, like, hard quartering to frontal, basically. And I'm like, I'm not going to take that shot. Like, surely he's going to give me a broadside shot. He stretches for about 15 seconds, and he turns, and he just starts going. And he's basically facing directly away from me. And I'm like, at one point, between him and his doe, like, he's got to turn, right? And with how he's going, if he goes to the left, that's all I need him to do because it's clear, it's open. If he goes to the right, there's a tree with this branch that's blocking that position, that angle. And I'm like, if he goes to the right, like, I don't really know if I have a shot. Well, he starts going to the right. He turns up, he starts going to the right, and this tree's, like, blocking him. And at this point, I start panicking. I'm like, dude, he's not stopping. Like, he's going to go up the ridge and over. And so I start yelling. I was like, bah, he just does not care. And the moment I go, I guess that was the signal for Jason and Colin to start hooing and hollering. And so they start just letting him have it. Like, hey, stop, like, doing all that stuff. And finally, one of Jason's yell finally gets his attention. And he's quartering away. And he turns and he looks right back at us. And there's that branch I'm talking about. It's a pine tree branch. So it's like the branch and there's a bunch of, like, green stuff around it. And I'm like, I know my bullet's going to sail over that. Because if you look at it on the footage, video's not live yet, but you will see it soon. Jason's filming to my right. So from his position, like, the tree branch was like more or less on the deer. But I was shooting to the left. So I had a little gap. Granted, I'm shooting quartering away. So I was purposely aiming a little bit back, right? Because he's quartering away. You want a back entrance to have the proper exit through the both lungs. So it's 380 yards. I'm already set up, and he stops. He turns. He looks at us. I send it, and the buck, he almost drops on the spot. Like, you could tell, like, his knees gave out, like, halfway, and I thought he was done. I go to rack, and then he gets back up, full right position, and he hops up to the hill, and I'm thinking, like, crap. Because the moment I shot, both Jason and Colin said, you hit him high. And I'm like, how did I hit him high? Like, I was rock solid on that shot. So to fast forward, what actually ended up happening was I broke 3 of his ribs. I missed his right lung, but I blew his left lung out. Okay, so that's what happened on the first shot, right? We didn't know that in the moment. And so he goes up the ridge. Now he's completely covered behind this tree. The moment he goes, he's out of my view, and they say hi. I'm thinking they're cresting over. We need to run over there and get this buck down. So I turn my dial, I put it back on 0, and I'm about to get up. And they're like, he's back in the open. And I'm like, what open? He's like, in the same spot you shot him. So I get back down on my gun, redoubt my gun back to 400 yards. And the doe, I can see the doe, like she dips over. And this buck is now turning left and he's going to go down. Basically, he's going over the ridge, but he's going at an angle. So I'm shooting him like quartering away again, basically this time on the left side rather than the right side. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is not good because you have to understand, I was confident in my first shot, but he's acting like nothing happened. He's acting like a normal deer. And so I'm thinking when they say high, I'm thinking like backstrap, like just way too high. And so as he's like walking and he would stop and he'd walk. So I'm thinking like, I'm going to time this shot. So I put it right in front of his neck and I shoot and he doesn't walk fast enough. And so I literally skim him. I skim his right shoulder and he takes off. And Colin's like, you hit him, but I think you hit low. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. At this point, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So again, everything we talked about where take your time, reassess, we didn't do that. I just said, pick up the cameras. I'm going to reload. Let's go. So I redial my gun back to 0, 100 yards. I put 2 more rounds in my magazine. We leave everything. Colin has his camera. Jason has my camera. I have the gun. And we just book it over there. Because again, it's a burn. And it's not super thick. But it's also thick enough where you can glass and deer might be covered up. But for the most part, if a deer's like running, you can see it. And so, and so obvious. Like this is one of the spots where like when you see an object, you can't lose sight of that object, right? And we're like, we know where he's at. Like that knob is where he's at. So instead of running straight to him, I'm like, we're going to stay up high and we're just going to side hill essentially until we can see into that draw that they had crested over into. I get over there. I look down on the draw. And it's about 150 yards away, and I see his doe. His doe is broadside and looking up at us. But with how the angle of that works, it's like, it's so steep, all I see is the head. I don't see the body of the doe. I just see the head of the doe looking at me. And I'm looking around, I'm scanning around, I'm like, I don't see the buck. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That means the buck's probably dead, right? The doe's looking at me for maybe about 5 seconds, and then she starts bounding off. And I'm like, oh, there's no buck. And then Colin's like, he's right there. And I'm like, what? And sure enough, this buck, nose to the ground, is just acting like he's tailing a doe. And my first thought was like, yeah, he looks about the same buck because Jason didn't even see anything. Jason was way behind us. So Jason's just looking at me and Colin. Colin's about 10 yards above me. And so my first reaction was, I need to shoot this deer. But then he doesn't look hurt. And I know I hit him the first shot. And so my first thing I said was, Colin, is that the same buck? And Colin, zooming on the camera, he's like, that's the same deer. And I'm like, the moment he said that's the same deer, I'm like, all right, I'm going to shoot this deer. And so it's so thick, like you can just see glimpses of this deer as he's cruising through. And he's not running, but he's doing exactly what a rutting buck would do. When its doe takes off, he's nose to the ground and like trotting. And I'm like, dude, he does not look like he's hurt. Again, I didn't know how I hit him the first shot. I didn't know how I skimmed him on the second shot. I'm just thinking I made 2 bad shots. And so there's one little clearing. I'm like, if he pops out right there, I'm going to shoot him. My crosshairs are sitting there. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. He doesn't show up. And I'm like, what the heck? Where'd this buck go? Well, somehow he already passed where I was aiming at. And so I aim at him. And he's like, I don't see him. I just see like basically the top half of his body. I just see crosshair, deer. I shoot. He drops. He starts rolling. And I look at Colin. I'm like, dude, Colin, I got him. And he's like, yeah, you got him. He's like tumbling. And then I'm like, doing my gun stuff. And then Colin's like, dude, he's up. Shoot him again. And I'm like, what? And so what had happened was I had hit him like high back. Like I basically took out his back legs. And so he rolled because obviously it took him off his feet. But then he was still alive. So he was like basically dragging himself on his 2 front legs. And you have to understand, I blew out one of his lungs and 3 ribs on my first shot. And he's like running. Now he's just like going straight down the hill. And I'm like, what is going on? So again, my this time 4th shot, I just put it on his neck. I shoot, and the deer doesn't react at all. He's just still running, like basically 2-handed running down this ridge. After my 4th shot, hit him. Okay, I did not miss a single shot. I drilled this buck all of my shots. And so I rack another one, and I think this is my last shot. And I think I told Colin, I was like, Colin, am I not hitting him? And Colin's like, dude, you're drilling him. And I'm like, okay. So then 5th shot, I shoot him again, and he acts like nothing happens again. And I'm like, Colin, are you sure I'm hitting him? And Colin's like, dude, you're drilling him. And then finally, like 2 seconds later, he starts tumbling and then he goes to his final resting place. Now, I look back at Colin and I'm like, are you sure I hit him? Because I don't think I hit him. He's like, dude, trust me. Like, you were blowing him out. Like, you were blowing his back out. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what's going on. So we get down there, and sure enough, this buck just has holes all over him. And so first shot, again, as I explained, I'm shooting his right side. So broke his 3 ribs, just shot a little too far back, missed his right lung, destroyed his left lung, acted like nothing happened. Second shot, skimmed his left shoulder. Third shot, basically hit back spine, dropped him in his tracks. And then the fourth and fifth shot, I'm shooting him facing directly away, but you have to understand, I'm not shooting the rump. I can see the entire back of him because his butt is down on the ground, and he's like facing up. And I'm drilling him on the back. And finally, he dies on the 5th shot. Now, the moral of that story is sometimes you don't have time to, let's take a photo. Let's mark where he is. Sometimes you just got to go. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the examples. Now, I wasn't proud of it, but that at the same time, before we cut him up open, I was like telling Colin and Jason, I was like, dude, it's been so long since I've had a rodeo where I had to do something like this to kill an animal. I'm just thinking like my first shot, I totally butchered, right? Mm-hmm. And then we cut this deer open and I'm like, dude, his organs are blown up. Moral of the story is those black-tailed deer, when they're running, I think they're the toughest animal that I have ever hunted. My big blacktail I shot in 2023, double lung him, broke his offset shoulder with a 7 PRC, and he still ran like 150 yards before it tipped over. Your buck last year, perfect shot. He still ran like 100 yards, stood on his feet for maybe 30 seconds before he tipped over. Mm-hmm. I think the last day of season, Chinu shot a deer. He shot a blacktail down there too. And I don't know exactly how he hit him, but he hit that deer, and the deer only made it 200 yards. But as he was tracking him, he found the deer's stomach and the intestines on the ground. Had completely dislodged his stomach. His stomach was on the ground. The intestines were on the ground, and that deer ran 200 yards.
Oh my goodness!
And so I was like, you know what? These blacktails are just tough.
Blacktails are tough, man.
Dude, so yeah, I'm just saying. It wasn't a perfect shot, obviously, because I missed one of his lungs. But if you give that shot placement to any other animal, they would not act like nothing happened. And that was the biggest thing I was telling Colin. I was like, okay, it might not be a completely lethal hit, right? A single lung. But the fact that he was just acting like nothing happened, that's what threw me off.
That's unheard of.
Because I would have thought like, dude, if I blew out a lung and broke ribs, he would have been like showing signs of like, oh, I'm hurt. Not that buck. But that's an example of sometimes you don't have time to take a screenshot or a photo and, do all this stuff. Sometimes you got to go.
Then this probably is not very helpful, but the only way that I can explain it is like, when you got to go.
And I think a lot of that has to do with repetition of just seeing or being in so many situations where you kind of can already predict the outcome of it because you've been in that situation before, mm-hmm. right? Like if you hunt enough, you know that sometimes, okay, if I shoot an animal and this is kind of how it hits, this is generally how the outcome goes, right? Mm-hmm. Another example of why sometimes I like to be aggressive is back in 2021, I took my nephew, Elliot, and he shot this buck at like 115 yards, this mule deer buck up a deer camp. And he shoots it and he drops on the spot, right? Like back legs go out, head goes down. We start celebrating. We get over there, the deer's gone. And we never found that deer, right? And so, but again, in that situation, we never thought like, oh, let's run over there and go check. We thought it was done. We thought the deer died. And we got over there, the deer's gone. So, to add on to your points, like it's hard to make a judgment, right? But it's one of those things where like sometimes the best way to gain that intuition is just having repetition of all these different outcomes, all these different scenarios. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, this is exactly what you do. But I guess we're just giving you guys examples of what happened and what we did and why it worked out and why we did certain things.
Yeah, and I think a good thing to remember too is kind of just from the anatomy perspective, unless the only thing that will drop an animal on the spot is injury to its brain or spinal cord. You can have a completely lethal hit that blows out the heart and both lungs, but that animal, because of adrenaline, just like you have going, mm-hmm. And especially during the rut, black-tailed bucks during the rut, they will go. And just because an animal moves off after you shoot it does not mean that it's not a lethal hit.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a extraordinary hit where the animal runs off. A lot of times, like with the bear, what I saw in 2021 is when I shot it, and this actually the exact same thing happened to the bear I shot this spring in Idaho. That was not a lethal hit that I tracked for a day and a half and never found, is that it dropped just from the shock of the impact, although there was no damage to its spinal cord or brain, so it got back up and went. The difference was, in my 2021 bear, that shot went through both of its lungs and its far side shoulder. The shock of the impact dropped it, but then it regained itself and ran off, and then very shortly died after, 50 yards away.
Yep.
Whereas my spring bear in Idaho was what I believe a gut shot, and it still dropped from the impact and did the bear thing, where they look like they're getting stung by a bee and spinning around in circles in the dirt. But then when it got up and regained itself, because that was not a lethal impact, it just kind of meandered off, trotted off into whoever knows where. And maybe it died, maybe it didn't. But learning how to read your shot, especially if you don't have a spotter telling you, can be really difficult.
Yep.
You're so focused on making that perfect shot that as soon as that goes off, a lot of times your gun recoils and you lose it in the scope. If you have a low recoil gun like a 308 with like a suppressor or something like that, you might be able to keep that animal in the scope. But either way, you get this jar from the shot, and then you have just like a split second to see and make an assessment of what that shot actually did to that animal.
Trust me, it's really hard, especially when you're the shooter, to accurately capture everything that's going on. Because when your shot breaks, as much as we try to make that shot a perfect shot, it doesn't always go the way we plan it to go, right? So one example is the elk I shot this year in Washington, my spike bolt. He's skyline. I'm shooting my 280 Ackley Improved suppressed. And he's about 440 yards. I shoot, and in my scope, his back legs go out. He drops on the spot. And I can see him rolling. In the moment he dropped on the spot, I never even went back to my gun. I picked up my camera. I looked at my dad, who was 150 yards away, and my next thought was, we need to get my dad on an elk. So I just completely left my spike, never even quote unquote made sure that he was down for good. I just said, I need to see where this herd's running so that I can call my dad over. But the only reason why I did that was because I was able to I saw impact in my scope. I saw exactly where I hit that spike, high shoulder, double lungish, and he dropped on the spot exactly how I wanted it. Because as you were mentioning, an animal dropping on the spot does not necessarily always mean it's going to die. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, just because an animal does not drop on the spot does not mean it's not a lethal hit. Mm-hmm. Most of the times when I'm shooting an animal and I have a perfectly broadside shot, I always aim just for the lungs. I don't try to hit any shoulder or any major bone just to prevent meat loss. And so a lot of times my double lung hits, the animal is running, because there's no bone to put him down right then on the spot. My Montana elk this year, perfect double lung. She ran 100 yards uphill before she died. But that's by, just how the bullet hit, and honestly by my purpose and intent of that shot. With my spike, because he was on top of the ridge, I didn't want him to roll down to the bottom. So I was like, I'm going to anchor him on the spot. And I shot and he dropped. Same thing as my 2023 mule deer and that I shot that's hanging up right here. Cliff country, solo, didn't want him to roll, high shoulder, dropped him on the spot. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's hard in the moment to be like, oh, that's exactly what happened, because what you intend and what actually happens are oftentimes not always perfectly aligning with each other. But the moral of the story that we're trying to say here is you have to always do your best judgment, because the one thing that you can control is you can always control exactly how that animal is positioned in your shot when your shot breaks. So depending on how he's angled and your bullet trajectory, you can say there's a good chance I hit shoulder or I hit bone or complete pass through the guts or something, right? Mm-hmm. And so that will give you a much better judgment of how you can go about, following up on whether you want to approach that animal or take a step back and reassess the situation.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think that's a great
covered it all.
Covered it all. Yeah. So I think, kind of as a final synopsis, especially for new hunters, or if you haven't kind of established that post-shot process, is the biggest thing, obviously, is unless when you know that you got to go and chase the animal, to just take a minute.
Yep.
Take a breath, focus again, see where you're at, drop a couple onyx pins, get a pin close to the animal, however you choose to do that, and take a picture, try to assess your surroundings. And then, in all reality, footage is king.
Yep.
Spotter scope footage, camcorder footage, the closer the better. Sometimes a little bit wider of a view if you feel like, oh man, that's too bad I don't have footage. I couldn't get really close in on that kill shot. So maybe you can't see the impact, but you see where the animal was headed.
A lot of times when I hunt solo, it is solely I'm depending on my footage because gun kicks, like, okay, for example, like this Montana cow elk hunt I went, so I'm using my 30-06, right? And I haven't shot this rifle. I've shot this rifle, practiced with it a lot, but it's been so long since I've shot at an animal with it, right? And so the moment I shot that elk, there was so much recoil, my gun went like airborne because I was not holding my gun how I should have because I'm so used to shooting a suppressor or like a muzzle brake where like the recoil is so mild, right?
Yeah.
And when I was looking through the scope, like it's totally like just out of my idea that this gun's gonna kick. So the gun goes off and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And I mean, the shot broke clean, double longer, perfect, exactly where I shot. But it caught me so off guard. I didn't even have like the proper time to react and to like try to follow up because it knocked me so far off. I didn't even go back to my gun. Like I re-racked another round in, but I immediately went to go look at my camera because I'm like, there's no way I can follow up with that. But I guess like we're all over the place, but basically there's the core fundamentals of what we do. And then depending on how it goes, the situation, that dictates how we go. So again, to conclude here, the first thing we do, if you have time, is take a picture, mark where you are, your shot position, and mark where you shot the animal, where the animal was when you shot the animal. And you can use that with the on-X compass mode. That's what we do.
Or in the scenario where you see the animal, mark where you see the animal.
Yes, or that. And then once you have that, if you said, hey, let's give this animal X amount of time, wait that time, and then go after him. Now, one of the questions that you might be asking is like, okay, well, when do you actually make a move? And I will specify a little bit here. And this is really dependent on terrain, okay? There were 2 stories that I brought up where the moment my shot broke, like I was really aggressive. And that was my archery mule deer in Wyoming this year. And that was my Oregon blacktail with a rifle this year. The reason why I was so aggressive with that is because both of my first shot, the moment they went off, I was unsure of the shot. Secondly, knowing that type of country, open country, I know I can get a second shot. If it's thick, nasty country where you know for a fact you are not seeing that animal again, I would not be aggressive. Mm-hmm. Because in the thick, nasty timber, it's so easy to lose these animals. But in the open country, I mean, they can run for 500 yards and you can still have eyes on them. That's the reason why in Wyoming with the bow, I just kept chasing him down because I'm like, he has nowhere to go, right? Like, even if he runs, I can see him. Same thing in Oregon. I was like, even if he's one draw over, it's still just open burn. Like, I know I can catch up back up to him and shoot him again. That's why I'm aggressive on those ones, right? So that's one of the reasons why I can be aggressive. So take that into account. So you say, when should you be aggressive? Basically, the question is, if you ran over to whatever spot, whatever vantage, can you shoot him again without making him run even farther or potentially losing him? Okay, then that's something that you're going to have to just kind of make a decision on the fly.
And a lot of times these decisions are made for you. You're shooting cross canyon.
Yep.
You're shooting over, 100 yards of deadfall that are going to take you 10 minutes to get through. You're shooting at close quarters and thick timber where the animal disappears as soon as you shoot. Yep. So a lot of times this is pretty apparent. Or you're out on the plains shooting an antelope, and you can chase it, watch it for 2 miles.
Exactly. So it's basically just, we're giving you a guideline, but you have to use your best judgment. And the most basic way I can put it is, if you're going to be aggressive on the animal, are your odds of being able to take a follow-up shot outweigh you just basically blowing that animal out and making it even worse on yourself? That's the biggest question I was just asking myself in that situation, if you didn't make a perfect shot, right? Yeah. The other one is, okay, there's the core fundamental, and the other one we weigh is, one, you made a good shot. Maybe you have footage or you had a spotter there, and they're just like, you drilled them. we don't see him dead, but let's just give him some time. And this is more common with archery, I feel like, because most of the time with a bow, you don't actually see the animal tip over in sight.
Usually, you have a much better ability to actually see where that arrow went.
Yep.
Because you're not dealing with the recoil and the long distances and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so after that, then basically, again, it's kind of like this umbrella, right? You start with wait, no, be aggressive. And then underneath the aggressive, there's a myriad of things you can do. Same thing with waiting it out. And at that point, it's kind of just like your judgment. But again, the most important steps that Nate and I feel like are what you do initially right then and there after your shot. Because that will greatly set your trajectory for recovery success. Mm-hmm. Because once you're aggressive, at that point, it's like you have to do whatever umbrella is under aggressive to take a shot. Maybe I should get 10 yards closer with the bow or whatever. Do I take a shot? Do I let him go a little bit more? And then I should get a second better stock in, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many little things to go about. But Nate and I, we just wanted to give a better idea of how you guys might be able to approach it, because there's really no one size fits all. It's like there's a cord that we follow and there's certain things we do, but ultimately how our first shot goes, the context of the hunt, the terrain of it, how the animals hit, how the animal's reacting, and honestly, your best judgment in the situation, that's going to dictate it.
Yeah, and I think to wrap it up, hopefully this conversation gets you thinking about that portion after the shot, because so often we are just focused on taking that shot, getting to a point where we have that animal in our scope and we get to squeeze the trigger or we get to release the arrow. So if you make it part of your normal thought process out there hunting, or it's in the back of your mind of like, if this does work out and I do get to take a shot on this animal, what does next look like? Does that look like me trying to, keep eyes on it from here? Does that look like me trying to push and be aggressive? And so just kind of, as you're hunting, if I were to spot an animal here, how would I stalk it? Mm-hmm. Just the hypotheticals while you're hunting, you have a lot of time out there. Do the same thing with if I were to shoot an animal right there and I think it's a good shot, but I'm by myself and I don't have it on footage. How am I approaching this? What does this terrain let me do? What is the, is it dumping rain and I'd rather not sacrifice a blood trail and be aggressive? Like, take into all those little considerations that are unique to every scenario of hunting. And at least have it in your mind that, the hunt does not end when you squeeze the trigger.
If anything, most of the time, that's when it begins.
That's right.
Yeah, and again, it's such a broad umbrella. And if we missed a certain question that you might have, or, maybe we'll do a more detailed version next time. But there's so many ways. Like, we basically talked about rifle and archery. We haven't even talked about muzzleloader. And I feel like that's one of the ones where it's even worse, because when you shoot, all you see is white dust. And so Jacob and I, we have a story of our elk where I know for a fact when my gun went off, I had no idea what happened, right? And we kind of just had to, do all this stuff. And fortunately, it worked out for the both of us. But at the end of it, hopefully this podcast, hopefully it taught you a little bit something or made you think in a different perspective that you might not be normally thinking. But the biggest thing is, hopefully we just kind of open the can here where you can start kind of walking yourself through your own paces of what you would do in certain situations. Because trust me, when the shot rings out, that's usually when I'm the most stressed out. It doesn't even matter if I drill the animal. It's like, that's usually when it's like, oh, I don't know if I got him. And, I feel like blood pressure is the highest at that point. So that's just a conversation that we wanted to have and hopefully give you guys some stepping stones if you haven't had any building blocks of your own. But with that said, we're going to wrap it up here, especially for late season archery, which is basically right about now. Hopefully this is something that you guys found informational and beneficial.
Should we do some fast facts?
Let's move into fast facts, and we're going to close this out because Nate's got some hunting to do.
That's right. Kind of on the topic of what happens after the shot.
Okay.
From the 1950s to the 1980s, many hunters would engage in something called ground checking or shoot and sort, meaning they would shoot first and check the legality or trophy potential of the animal afterwards. A look back to 1949 in Wisconsin, at least one doe, fawn, or spike was abandoned in the woods for every 2 legal bucks, meaning that approximately one half of hunters would shoot an illegal deer, check it, and then continue hunting and just leave it in the woods.
That's a lot of deer.
It's a lot of deer. And this is one thing that outdoorsmen of this day and age are so much better at, is identifying your animal and making sure that's the animal you want to squeeze the trigger on.
Yeah, I think we've made strides.
And
at least I feel like I'm speaking for the majority of people when I'm saying that we're making strides of going from shoot and then check versus now really triple checking and then taking your animal.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are things that help us with that, like extraordinary optics, Vortex, that help us check those animals first.
Dude, that's a great fast fact. That's actually really interesting. Mine's a little bit more simple. Just a question for you. Not that this is Trivia Duel, but do you know what SAMI stands for? SAMI spec?
I know that that's the pressure. It's what, I don't know, maybe there's more things that fall under SAMI, but a lot of times it's like the maximum certified pressure that a round can push through a barrel to maintain safety, but I don't know what it stands for.
Yeah, in a way. So SAMI, SAAMI, is the acronym for an organization, and it stands for Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute. And so it's an organization, and this is a U.S. organization, and basically their main role is that they voluntarily, they are the one that establishes the industry standard for like firearms and ammunition and components. So basically, SAMI has to make sure that any new cartridge or whatever is safe before X company can commercially produce, a new cartridge. So for example, right, like the 7PRC, that's one of the hottest cartridges. They had to get SAMI approved before the 7PRC could hit the shelves. So with that said, today in 2025, there are around 189 cartridges that are SAMI approved.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
It doesn't help because my idea last year was like, I'm going to own a gun at every cartridge. I got a long ways to go.
Man.
Anyway, that's what SAMI is. That's what they stand for. They're an organization, and that's just kind of how we get our guns today.
Well, folks, hopefully you enjoyed this week's kind of spitfire discussion back and forth and gets you thinking about what you're going to do after the shot. And next week, I think we're going to dive into a little bit of after the shot maybe and talk about tracking animals.
That's right.
Hope you guys find this enjoyable, and watch it on YouTube, listen to it on the audio platforms, leave a comment, reach out to us. We've been getting a lot of updated photos from people and success stories. And it has been, they're fun. They're awesome.
2025 has been a great season for a lot of you guys, and we're stoked to see it. But with that said, we're going to wrap it up here. We will see you guys next week.